Hi guys, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back. So this is the start of another vlog style monthly wrap up. And for the month of July, I'm actually here back in Canada for the month, visiting with friends and family, and then going back in August to Copenhagen. So we've actually been here for about a week and a half already. We arrived at Pearson and then spent the first kind of little week in the GTA where my partner's family lives. So we were there for a bit, and then we traveled up north and we actually went canoeing and camping with some of my siblings, a couple of my siblings and my nephews, and we took our 10-month-old baby with us. So that was a bit of an adventure. And now we're spending a couple weeks at my family's cottage and then going back to the GTA for the final week, and then back to Copenhagen at the very beginning of August. So I have actually read 3 books already so far this month. I have been reading others, but I'll get to that in like the next part of this. But I'll catch up on what I have read so far, which is actually 3 contemporary romance books, which is really random. I kind of thought that I was contemporary romanced out, but just the start of the month, I kind of had like a bad day where I kind of just wanted to be like distracted mentally, and I find that a really easy to listen to contemporary romance on audiobook is a great way to just have a bad day where you like just have it on in the background when you're doing everything. And yeah, so that is what I did. So I read Savor It to start off this month. This is a 2024 new release. Actually, all 3 of these contemporary romances are 2024 new releases. Only one of them was like one that I had my eye on, so I only get like check intentional reading points for that. I should like give myself some sort of reward for this at this point. Yeah, Savor It by Tara DeWitt is a dual POV. Our male lead is a fancy chef who was recently fired because he's sort of responsible for the restaurant losing their Michelin star. He's taking some time away from the spotlight, and he has to help set up this new restaurant and develop the new menu for this new restaurant that they have that happens to be in the small town where our female lead is. And he has a teenage niece who he is the guardian for. His sister passed away 3 years prior to this. But the idea is for him to only be in the small town like for the summer, and then he is traveling, or then he wants to move back to New York to continue like getting back into the chef game again. I think whether or not you like this is going to depend on whether or not like what you are reading contemporary romance books for. If you are reading for the drama, this is not the romance book for you. And I actually saw that in some like negative reviews where like nothing happened, and it's like that's a good thing sometimes. It was definitely the romance that I needed on the day of. I think I gave this a 5-star. Contemporary romance 5 stars are like different than fantasy 5 stars, we all know. Just like a sweet, nice romance where the conflict is that he's moving back at the end. So I can see that if you want like a lot of conflict and drama in your romance, or a lot of comedy, like this is not the romance for you. If you want like just like a quiet, sweet romance but has a really great audiobook, I would recommend listening to this. It is, I think, very clearly being set up as the start of a a romance series where our main character, the female lead, she has 3 brothers who are, I think, very clearly going to be getting their own romances. One of them is divorced from his like high school sweetheart, and so that's going to be a second chance at love for sure. And another one of her brothers was a fireman who got injured, and so like that's gonna be a thing, I'm pretty sure. And another one was like away playing baseball for all of it, but then like I think he like loses his contract at the end, so like that's gonna be a thing, you know, like anyway. So that's, I think it's very clear that her brothers are also gonna get books. So then I read The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren, which was the one that I had my eye on. I generally try to check out the Christina Lauren books if I have a chance. Sometimes they work for me, sometimes they don't. This one did work for me. This one is an interesting one where it was sort of like, it wasn't even like a green card marriage. It was not even really a trust fund marriage, even though that's sort of what it turns into. It's like our main characters need housing when they're in college, and the only graduate student housing that the male lead gets offered is for like a married couple. Like he has to be married, and meanwhile our female lead like financially needs, I think she's like moving out. There's something she needs somewhere to live, and so they like got married on paper. And our main female lead is a artist, and she's kind of like struggling financially. This is like 3 years down the line, she's struggling financially to like make it as an artist. And our male lead has some sort of like trust fund thing. He's from like a obscenely wealthy family. And he has one of those like your trust fund kicks in when you get married contracts, which he didn't realize at the time, but there's like a problem. And so he needs to go to a family wedding, but he needs his wife that he has not told any of his family was like fake or that they were not supposed to be together anymore. Anyway, he needs his wife to come to this family wedding. Anyway, so he offers her some money to like come and play his wife that he mistakenly has told his family was a doctor, because at the time when they first got married, she was pre-med. So that's the whole setup. And I thought it was actually really great. Like, I enjoyed the chemistry. I find it both believable and not believable that they like didn't interact at all while living with each other for 2 years. Like, it's sort of like they were each doing their own thing. They were both like really, really busy with their own studies. So I can partially see that. But then there's also the part of like, you were sharing an abode. You lived together, whatever. But they very obviously like find each other attractive, like when they start hanging out, and when they're doing this fake thing, and he's like very button up, proper kind of guy, and she's like very free spirit, like really funny. But then the background to this is this like obscenely wealthy private island wedding that's just so over the top, where like all of their guests are spending the week on this private island. There's like a different themed party every single night, and just like the excessive wealth, like that's a whole thing, right? So I actually thought this was pretty good. Like, I would say that this was a successful, decent Christina Lauren romance book. If you, like me, kind of like hit or miss with them, this one was fun. And then the final romance book that I just finished last night was Ready or Not. I don't remember the author's name. I don't remember how I found out about this book. I think it was Kristen from Kristen Crave's books. I meant to double check that. And this is an interesting romance where our main character, our female lead, is actually pregnant at the start of the book. This is not dual POV. Both the previous two were. This one is just our main character's perspective. And the book starts off essentially with her finding out that she's pregnant after a one-night stand a few weeks prior. It's not with the baby daddy. There is some baby daddy stuff that goes on, exploring like that relationship and working through the right amount of communication and involvement with this biological father who she doesn't really know, and the stuff that's going on in his life that makes his ability to commit to the situation a little bit more complicated. So that is definitely drama that does go on, although I would agree that similar to Savor It, this is a relatively drama-free book where we're just like dealing with our main character's emotions of like working like over the time of this pregnancy. It's not heavily pregnancy related. It's more like how pregnancy makes her start to think about herself and others, and her relationships with others, and the dynamic with that, and self-worth, and sort of who you're doing things for. Like, those are kind of the things that are at play and that she's thinking about at that time. But there is some elements too of like being a single parent while pregnant. And then our love interest here is our main character's best friend's brother, who she's known since a child. Her best friend has like been friends since children, and this older brother has like always been around. They're like BFFs as well. And when she announces that she's pregnant, or when she finds out that she's pregnant, he starts to like really become a little bit more involved in like making sure that she is taken care of. So if you like single parent like dad romances, I think this would also really work for you, because he's kind of that caring male type who like gets really not fatherly, but it's a similar vibe. It's a similar vibe for how he cares for her. Definitely content warnings here for miscarriage and infertility, not with our main character, but with a very important side character. So that is definitely on paper quite a bit, and like the complicated dynamics that are involved with that situation. Overall, having been pregnant within the last year, I thought this book was an interestingly cathartic read. So I will say that. I liked that it was relatively low in the drama. I didn't need there to be like a ton of baby daddy drama. It was the right amount of baby daddy drama, I think. And I felt for the characters that were involved. I felt very like empathetic to all of the situations going on. and I really liked it. I would definitely check out another book by this author. What I'm currently reading and what's coming up next. So currently I have been reading The Last Hero. This is the third and final book in the first sister series. I have been listening to this audiobook like since the beginning of the month, and I'm just not vibing with it. It's like not the direction that I wanted this series to go. Our characters are like all really, really spread out. We like have different characters that we're getting perspectives from. I can't say whether or not existing previous characters are still in the mix because I don't want to say who made it and who hasn't made it up to this point. I'm just not connecting with the new POVs that we're getting in quite the same way. It's just I don't know. I listened to the audiobook on the other two, and for some reason the audiobook isn't working for me quite as well this time around. So I've still been listening to that. Coming up next, I don't think I have like any ebooks coming down the line, like from my holds. Oh no, that's not true. Oh no, ebooks, yeah. I don't think I have any ebooks coming down the line, so I might pick up Age of Death, the 5th book in the Legends of the First Empire, because there's no like wait list for that on my library, so that's a possibility. I could pick up the ebook for The Last Hero if I wanted. And audiobook wise, I also have A Letter to the Luminous Deep, which I've been waiting for an audiobook for my copy at the library for quite a while. So that one came up recently. I just took it out, so I'm gonna be able to start reading or listening to that as well. I'm a little bit nervous about the audiobook. This is an epistolary book where two characters are writing letters to each other, and then like sometime later there's each one of their siblings are communicating with each other, like writing letters to each other, because the original two have gone missing. So I don't know, I think epistolary audio could be good. I have seen I think the other people that I've seen reviews for this, two out of the 3 other people I've heard mention this didn't love the audio, so that makes me a little bit nervous. So yeah, I think that's it for now. I'm going to go and enjoy some cottage life for a bit, and I will see you in my next check-in. Today is July 25th. I have some more books to update you on. It is the end of our time at my family's cottage. So this evening, actually, we're going to be driving back down to the city to finish up our holiday back with my partner's family down there. So yeah, as I said, 2 more books to fill you in on. So the next thing that I read was Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 5th book in the Legends of the First Empire series, and it is almost the end. I have 1 more book in that series to go now, Age of Empire. I obviously, as a 5th book in the series, I can't say too much about what is happening in that series plot-wise, but we have definitely taken a shift in where we are focusing this series, both like physically and maybe like zoned in a little bit more on certain characters, and as well as thematically a little bit. Like people did talk about there being like a bit of a distinctive shift between the first 3 books and the second 3 books, and I definitely am noticing that in this one. And as well as the final 3 books were originally, I think, supposed to be intended as like 1 book, that then he had to like flesh out a little bit for more character moments, that then suddenly became 3 books instead of 1. So you can see that that book ended, the 4th book ended in a cliffhanger. This book ended in a cliffhanger as well. I'm assuming the final book will not. We'll get some conclusion there. Thematically, we have gone a lot more into myths of like world creation. We're exploring that a little bit more. It's not necessarily the direction I thought this series was going, and wouldn't have been my choice, as I am someone who doesn't care too much about like world myth and creation. Like that's not a big draw for me in book series. I like there to be a very clear history, but I don't necessarily need to know all about it, like how worlds came to be. I liked that this was like, that this series was the backstory and myths, but like actually things that happened for the Rhaeria Revelations, which I haven't read yet, but I like that element, that this is like history, and then we're going to eventually see that, you know, things that these become the legends of the future. Whereas this next 3 books, we're focusing, like the 4th, 5th, and I'm assuming the 6th ones, we're focusing in on the gods and the actual the gods and the creation of this world and all of these peoples that we have in this world, as a subset of main characters are on a bit of a journey or like mission. So this one definitely does have more of that like we're on a mission to do something kind of a feel than the first three did. We have like grouped up a little bit. So there's like a group of people who are doing a thing. So we're with those characters a lot more than we are other characters who were more important in the first three books, but like stuff has kind of slowed down. Like there's not a lot of like progress happening per se in a certain area. So those characters, it's just like at a bit of a standstill. So we're not getting those characters' perspectives all that often. So we're like focusing in on the people who are like ticking stuff away and journeying to work towards something. I am enjoying it, but I think at this point, I actually think that I enjoyed the first three a little bit better than this, like so far what I've read in the final three. But that's just like a personal preference on like what you like to read about. And for me, like world creation stuff isn't necessarily a big draw for me. Overall, I'm still loving the series. I do think that we're having like slightly fewer emotional impact, but I think the big thing for that with me, or maybe we are having those moments, but I haven't been able to get the audiobooks for these final three books in the series, which is absolutely devastating because that audio narrator and the author writes about this in his author notes all the time, is amazing. So if you're ever going to listen to this series, you're just going to do the audio the whole way through. I miss the narrator and what he did with those characters and the voices and like those emotional moments. So I feel like I'm missing out in that sense. So that's Age of Death. I will definitely do a should you read or like overall final thoughts, like something I'm definitely gonna talk about this series at large when I finish it. The next thing that I read was Foul Days. This is a new release that came out this year. I think it's a debut. I should always check that. I never check. Well, anyway, it's a new release from this year. It came out in June, and it was one of the new releases that I like had my eye on, so I get like a little like check in terms of reading intentionally in that regard. Oh, I wrote down the setup on my phone. So this is actually the first book in a duology. And the second book is already coming out in October of this year, Monstrous Nights. So I'm really, really excited that we're getting a duology. We're getting a duology within 1 year. It'll just feel so like good and conclusive, I guess. So I'm really looking forward to picking that up. Despite my like excitement to pick up the next book, I feel like this book was like totally serviceable. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. I did really enjoy it. I really enjoyed it, but I feel like I never got like hooked in a way, like it wasn't like, oh my God, I feel like it had potential. And there was one thing that was keeping it from being like so amazing. And that was that we don't really dive into the characters' thoughts and emotions. It's there, but it's a little bit light and it's not necessarily a big focus. I haven't told you what this is about. So Foul Days is following a main character called Kasara, and she is a witch who lives in this like walled city, and it's not like walled to keep things out, it's actually walled to keep the monsters in. And there is like a bit of a pressure cooker stressful situation where Kasara is essentially like pressured into giving up her shadow, which is the source of her magic as a witch, in order to escape an abusive ex-boyfriend who's a little bit monstrous. And so she winds up in the fancy protected city where the effects of not having her shadow become apparent very, very quickly. And she kind of regrets this decision, and then she gets linked up with a detective who's trying to solve a murder that is linked in with this whole why she was pressured into getting rid of her shadow. There's like a bigger thing going on here. I'm gonna work on saying that a little bit more smoothly for the review that I do for this book. I have notes, they're just on my phone. Why I do that, it's beyond me. So I did really like it. The first 60% of the book is definitely like, this thing happened, and then here's the plan. Well, first we have to do this in order to then do this, and then in order to do this, we have to do this. And so it's like follows like a little bit of like a stepwise storytelling, like checking boxes, doing certain things to then progress the plan. While the last 40% of the book is then more into the execution of the plan itself and like the final shakedown with all of that. So I did really like it. I enjoyed the dynamic between Kasara and the cop. It had a little bit of a feel of like Vanya and Emmerich from Little Thieves, where he's like the straight-laced detective guy and she's like a little bit looser morals. I just wish that we had got like a slightly deeper dive into our main character, and I think that is something that some characters are going to feel a difference. We are dealing with facing your monsters, facing the like escaping and moving on from an abusive ex. We are dealing with like struggling with trust out of all of that. There are definitely like mistakes of your past and how you're holding on to responsibility for those mistakes. One thing that really bothered me in the moment, where there's like two separate scenes where our main character, I almost called her Vanya because in my head she's like so similar to Vanya, but Kasara shares a mistake of her past with the copper guy, and he handles it so well. He's like, of course you made a mistake. You were 16. 16-year-olds make mistakes. It's okay. Well, like that was the gist of how he handled that. And then there's a later scene where a mistake from his past comes up and she's like, oh, how could you? This was so wrong. How could you do this thing? And she was so mean to him about his mistake, and she just should have been a little bit more compassionate to like match the compassionate energy that he gave her when she confessed her flaws of the past. So that was like a disappointing moment where I was like upset at the way that the character handled that. But yeah, overall I enjoyed this book. I definitely like read it a little bit quickly. I was enjoying it enough to keep going. It just wasn't like, I always feel bad like saying like it wasn't perfect for me, and like obviously it wasn't perfect for me. Not every book is going to be perfect for me, and that's okay. It was still really good. I did notice some of the other reviews kind of along the similar vein of being like, I think if people had problems with it, it was that like it didn't totally delve into the characters in a way that was potentially possible. Maybe the book would have had to be a little bit longer, but I wasn't upset at the direction that it went. I in this moment in my reading at this time, it's not always the case, but at this time, if it wasn't going to be like the perfect amount of emotions, I was okay with less emotion than going the opposite direction and having it be like overwrought, where all she is thinking about is, or like every line in the page is about her intense feelings about everything. I think like right now, I like that sometimes, but right now where I am, if it's not going to be the perfect amount of feelings, I'd prefer it to be a little bit less, and for me to just like enjoy the story. Okay, so what is up next? Currently, I am reading A Letter to the Luminous Deep, and I'm listening to the audiobook, which I was a little bit nervous about, and I would say like correctly so. Where this, now it's not that it's epistolary, it's the style of epistolary that I don't think is best suited for audio. If it was two people writing to each other back and forth, audio is totally fine. There's 4 people involved here. Actually, there's more people, really. So far, I have encountered 4 POVs, which you know that going in. But it's not just that we're like, these 2 people are writing to each other and these 2 people are writing each other. It's like, these 2 people are writing each other and these 2 people are writing each other, but then they're also saying, oh, hey, wait, I have a letter from this person to this person. So we're just getting like, everybody's writing everybody. And there's a little bit of a timeline thing with it too. And I just think that is maybe not, it would have been better physically reading this. So that is unfortunate, because audiobook is what I have. I also then, from an ebook perspective, because I needed something else to pick up ebook wise, I'm reading Age of Empire. So the last book in the Legends of the First Empire series. So really soon I'm going to be done that series. I have not really continued on with The Last Hero. I don't think I'm not going to DNF it. I would like to finish this, but I do actually have to finish it because I'm using Everend for that, and I'm going to put my Everend account on hold when I do my KU thing. So I do have to finish it. I just don't love the direction that it has taken, and I am not in love with some of the characters that we are focusing on in this one. So that is where we're at for reading. Headed back down to the city, as I said before. We're going to be doing a little bit more visiting with friends and my partner's family. And then, before you know it, we will be back in... so many technical issues. This is the 3rd time that I have sat down to film this in the last 36 hours. So fingers crossed, this is it. It's also coming out a little bit later than I had planned, like both this check-in and this video, because more technical issues, but let me fill you in on where we're at. So I'm actually probably going to be interrupted by a nap ending. So technical issues, basically like the day that we got back, my phone started being a little bit buggy, and like within 10, 12 hours of that, it had completely died, like would not turn on. So I film from my phone, as you know, so that is why this took me a bit, and then I'm like figuring out the new transferring system. I've lost things. Anyway, that is why this is coming out a little bit later. I finished 2 more books before the end of July, so I'm going to tell you about them now, and I'll also talk a little bit about what's coming up next if I have time. So first then, or like the next book that I finished was A Letter to the Luminous Deep. I had to rapidly listen to like that, not rapid, like not fast paced, but I had to like listen a lot because I was going to lose my copy. So like over the span of like 2 or 3 days, I just like listened as often as I could. I did end up enjoying it, though I would say that I do not recommend the audiobook. Nothing to do with the narrators, they did a great job. It more has to do with the structure of the book itself not really being suited for audiobook. And I don't mean epistolary. I think like epistolary novels with like 1-2 people writing back and forth to each other totally works. I really loved the audiobook for This Is How You Lose the Time War. But with this amount of people corresponding and like with all like the automated messages and the timeline, like all of those things, it didn't pan out. I think the second half of the book I was a lot more interested in and enjoyed a lot more than the first half of the book. Once the 2 people, like the 2 main, I'm gonna say main characters, and the ones that like it's the 2 people that are falling in love, their journey, they're the ones that have gone missing. Those are the main characters in my head, even though they didn't quite get as much time as I would have preferred, but I really loved their letters of them getting to know each other. It has like a very like proper feel to it where they're like, have to like, is it okay if I like say dear or like yours at the end, and like that element of doing the right thing, like proper speech, like dropping titles, becoming more familiar. It does all of that in a really, really cute way. So I really loved their correspondence, and I actually really, really wish I had gotten more of it. I did get caught up into the mystery, like of like what happened and what perhaps they had discovered under the sea. Like all of that was actually really interesting, but it took a while to get there. I do not think this is going to be a book for everyone though. I think this has a fairly small subset of readers are going to enjoy and like this book. If you like really quiet, more reflective books and the epistolary thing does not turn you off, then maybe give this a shot. But I think just like all of the things combined is going to be like a smaller subset of readers are going to like this. There is a sequel. I had no idea that this was a series start. I definitely, based on the synopsis, would have assumed that this was a standalone, but it is a series, and I am excited to see where we go in the next book, especially with like the ending included. There's like also an additional brother between one of the 2 sisters. They have a brother as well, and he like, there was a letter from him included at the end that I thought was really funny, and I am excited to see how that is incorporated into the next book. I'm also curious to see what the structure will be of the next book. Then I finished Age of Empire, and yeah, so I have officially completed the Legends of the First Empire series. I'm just like proud of myself for like reading through on a series in a reasonable amount of time. I am struggling with that. I feel like I would like to do that more. So I'm just like overall happy at that, like from a completionist perspective. Yay. I don't want to repeat the things that I already said when I talked about Age of Death earlier. So like all of that is true. The pace of this 6th book, because it's like the last third of like this arc, was wild. It was so fast in that feeling of like, you know, like the last 100 pages of a book where you're like, I can't put it down. I need to find out, everything's happening. I need to find out what happens. But it was like for like 50% of the book. For the first half of the book, I was just like feeling like I could not put the book down. And I wanted to be able to put the book down. Like I wanted the pace to slow down so that I could set the book down and like do other things. And it did eventually. We had more reflective moments that were a lot more like a little bit like philosophical, in order for our like characters who were like doing the thing in these 3 books, in order for them to like progress and succeed or like move forward, etc., they had to like come to terms with who they are and reflect on injuries and trauma and like what's holding them back. Like that was like a really like interesting, reflective, philosophical moment or element of this book in particular, based on like where they are. So that was interesting, and it did provide some like nice cumulative moments, I guess, for the books. But it happened like earlier on in the book, whereas like the actual ending itself was a lot more quiet than I would have anticipated for
a book, a series with this scope, especially too with like how certain character lines ended, or like certain characters ended, were just like almost ended off page, and that felt odd. I also think it was really interesting having read this series before Rhyuria Revelations, where if you had read Rhyuria first, you would know this whole time what is different from what's being said in the future. Like how the story has changed, how history has been told differently, whereas I had no context for that. There was a really funny moment where somebody's like, oh, like this is going to be in the future, this is going to be, you know, thing, and she's like, what? Like that's nothing. And that was really funny. Like I'm sure that we're gonna get that later on. But the author, Michael J. Sullivan, did like a little thing at the end where you got a little bit more of an insight into how things are gonna be told differently in the future. And it was so heartbreaking and like distressing. So I'm really looking forward to reading Rhyuria Revelations. I know Jashana from the channel, Jashana, is doing a world read-along next year, so I think I'm gonna leave it here with this like world, with the world of Alan, and I am gonna do the read-along with her in 2025. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. Is it a new favorite series? I'm not sure. I think I have to reflect on that a little bit because the last 3 books didn't go the way that I thought. So I wanna just like, I wanna let that simmer and think about. It definitely has like a cozy place in my heart, for sure. So yeah, that is July. I think I read 7 books overall. Not bad. I don't really care about numbers. I hope that your reading in August so far is like off to a great start. For me, it is. So I have like a ton of things on the go. I have taken out a bunch of stuff from the library. I have put my Everend subscription on hold for the next 12 weeks because I'm going to be doing my KU project, probably, although I've hit a bit of a snafu. So Everend is on hold, which means that I am like tentatively DNFing The Last Hero. And then the KU snafu is that I went to register for the other day and it was like, oh, this account doesn't get access to KU. And I think that is like a location thing because my account is based in Denmark. So if you're also in Denmark and you have Kindle Unlimited and Google knows that you, or like Google or Amazon, whatever, knows that you are in Kindle or that you are in Denmark, like let me know. So I have to contact customer service to figure that out, but I have been like psyching myself up for this all year. I'm gonna find a way. So there's a ton of Kindle stuff coming and I'll do like a TBR for that soon. But what I've taken out from the library in the meantime is Divine Rivals, the audiobook I was able to listen to on the flight back to Copenhagen. It's like the red eye coming from Toronto to Copenhagen overnight. I was able to like sleep the whole flight. That was perfect. But I wasn't able to sleep because of like how awkwardly she was like lying on me and like adjusting. So I was able to listen to a ton of the audiobook. I'm like 80% of the way through the Divine Rivals audiobook. You will hear about that in my next wrap up. I have also picked up, and I'm about 40 or 50% of the way through The Pomegranate Gate. I'm gonna be talking about this book more in an upcoming video, like in my next video. So I'll leave synopsis and all of that, but just brief, it's a portal fantasy inspired by the Spanish Inquisition. And then I finally got another copy for Those Beyond the Wall by Messiah Johnson. Came in, so I'm reading that. I'm about 25% of the way through that, but I was already reading that, and then my library whole copy got taken back and now I have it again, so I'm gonna be able to finish that hopefully this time. And I've also taken out but not started The Obelisk Gate, which is one of my priority reads for this year. Oh yep, there's somebody waking up. I'll be right back. False alarm, but I don't have long. Oh nope. Final book to tell you about that I have on the go is The Legacy of the Brightwash. So when my phone was dead the other night, I needed to read before bed, and I have a physical copy of this book. This is also another priority read for the year. It's a priority series start. I forgot to say that The Obelisk Gate is like a priority series continuation. So with The Legacy of the Brightwash series start, I have 2 ideas on a strategy to make this happen. Because as I've mentioned in my videos before, I am struggling with like getting physical book reading time. So the strategies is to just read it really slowly. 1, maybe 2 chapters a day. The other strategy is, I think she's like confused, like who are you talking to? The other strategy is that it's available on Kindle Unlimited. So assuming that I get access to that, I will maybe be able to supplement with the ebook as well in that format. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Let me know something that you read and loved in July, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day. Bye.